a very good morning to you. It's Friday, August 5th, 2022. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for staying with us here, and thanks for being with us here at WESN, and particularly in this program, AM Prime. Let's tell you what's happening this morning. We should be talking moments from now with attorney Jayanti Lakshmi and advocate, prisoner reform advocate Debbie Jacob, on matters having to do with the killing of Akili Charles a couple of days ago. Remember, he's the person who came out of prison after winning a battle in the courts on the basis of seeking bail for people on murder charges, and he led that struggle from the inside, of course, with attorneys on the matter, and he was out and about and shot by persons thus far unknown. The question is why and what kind of person he was. And there are lots of people with good stories about him. Debbie Jacob was one of them. She said he was a model prisoner while for the time that he was kept in prison. Let's make the point that he was freed on a charge of, well, on a discussion, a decision on what was said to be a no-case submission, so that there was no case against him as far as the courts were concerned, and he was let out and continuing to do community work in the areas in which he lived. And she said he did a splendid job as an inmate on remand for the years that he was there, almost 10 years on the matter. So we're talking with them about that and the issues behind it. Also on the program this morning, the organization called the Riu Dan Movement in Enterprise. They have a program they call Girls Say Yes. That's in the face of crime. How they're dealing with it, given what they say is that the way in which the community is pockmarked with borderlines and no-go areas for a lot of people. If you live on one side of the street, you can't go to the other side. Inside of that, they've come up with this program saying Girls Say Yes. We talk with them about what that is. We should have been talking with the Member of Parliament for Hoover South, Rudranath Indar Singh, on the question of the situation regarding what the CPO has put on the table. We heard yesterday from Sharon Richards, the president of the Prison Officers Association, saying that the CPU simply came to a meeting and said, well, look, 4%, that's it, you take it or leave it. And they're saying that, well, that is a violation of every rule in the question of negotiations for wage adjustments and salary adjustments. And they are not taking it like that. Well, we can't get Mr. Indar Singh, because he says, he called this morning to say that his area has been flooded out, among others, and he was up to late last night. Up to this morning, he said, working with residents on that. We're trying to continue to find someone. We could talk about that this morning. And those things and the program as we go forward in the next hour and a half. I think we have Debbie Jacob and attorney Jayanti Lakshmi with us. Good morning. How are you?
Fighting up.
All right, Ms. Lakshmi Dayal, you there?
Hi, good morning, Andy. Yeah.
All right, good morning. Good to see you. All right, so let's start with Debbie, and we'll come to you, Ms. Lakshmi Dayal, in a bit. You said that Mr. Charles was a kind of a model person behind bars. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's start with that. What do you mean when you say that?
Well, he was a very positive influence inside of Port of Spain prison. He participated in every program he could, whether it was an academic program like my CXC English and Caribbean history class. He did math inside of there. He did the PVC furniture making class. He did everything he could. And he always had a keen sense of what justice should look like.
Yeah.
And so he stood up for the rights of inmates inside of there. He was a quiet presence in class.
Go ahead.
In a place where, everybody's very loud and boisterous and feel like you have to be as loud as possible to make your voice heard. He was a person who was always quiet, spoke very little, but made a big impact when he did speak.
Yeah, I'm curious as to, we could put that against the fact that he was charged with murder. Sometimes, from my own understanding, from outside, how things are conducted inside, sometimes people give a sense of themselves that they can be associated with the crime for which they had been committed. It seems as though he didn't sort of exhibit none of that?
He did not have any of the stereotypic behavior that we would associate with people who commit crime. I never saw him get angry. I mean, he did. I don't want to say that he did get angry, but he was very articulate, and he could express his views. He did not, get angry like some inmates do because they can't express themselves and they fight instead. But innocent or guilty, well, he had no case. But innocent or guilty, it's never my job inside of there to judge anybody. I work with young men who are trying to turn their lives around.
Right. And
nobody worked nobody worked harder or more nobly than he did to make an impact on this country. The work that he did is not just for inmates. It's for you. It's for me. It's for every single person in this country.
All right, let me bring Ms. Lakshmi Dayal into the discussion. Well, thanks for agreeing to come on.
Sure.
Let's talk a little bit about how he came to be associated with that action which led to this decision in the courts.
Well, I think that everything that Debbie said is true about Mr. Charles, and my interactions with him. I had the same feeling, and I think that he did have a very keen sense of what was right and what was wrong. And I think he was able, after being released, for 9 years, he sat there waiting for his day in court and to be able to prove his innocence. And that's what he did. It just took 9 years. And he was involved before in an action because he was one of those persons who very, what I consider to be an atrocious miscarriage of justice, was nearing the end of the preliminary inquiry stage when the whole debacle occurred with the former chief magistrate who was hearing those matters, and those matters had to start de novo. So he had been a victim of the system before, apart from the false, or what we consider to be a wrongful arrest and prosecution, for which he had eventually been released. He was also a victim of that circumstance. So I think that all of those things weighed heavily on him. And he was a thinker. He was certainly a thinker. And I think that he was able to understand through his 9 years what was the role and function of bail and what it wasn't. And something that many people in this country today don't understand is that bail is not meant to be punishment. Bail is meant primarily to secure the attendance in court. And if there's no reason to suspect that you will not attend court, if there's no reason to believe that you're going to harm witnesses or whatever it is, then why not be allowed to have bail? And I think that that's the way, he framed the question. We had been involved in previous matters dealing with restrictions on bail with respect to crimes involving firearms and so on, whether or not that it was right for Parliament to intervene and to deal with it. And I think that, Achilles' case, he really having, again, what this case highlights is something that the evidence of the state was so poor, and nobody had the ability to step in at any point in time over those 9 years, even when they said, look, let's try, this PI is almost an end and we have to start over, etc., etc. No judge or magistrate had the power to step in and said, listen, it is unfair to keep these people locked up for so long. The state's evidence is very, it's weak. Perhaps we should grant them bail. And I think that he was able to formulate the thoughts in his mind that, look, this isn't something that we wish to, that should continue. It is unjust. And so he decided to mount this challenge. How specifically he became involved with the matters through his criminal defense attorney, as well as someone who would have worked with our team before on constitutional. There's a very significant overlap between the criminal and the constitutional, because of course the constitutional rights of persons who are arrested and detained is something that's always coming before the court. So that's how the matter came to be. But in his mind, and again, we tend to broad brush, paint everyone with the same broad brush of criminality and think that all criminals or all persons behind bars or all persons accused of crimes behave a particular way, think a certain way, have very limited education, etc. and that's just not the case.
All right, so
It's just,
in this case, did he have,
very,
from what you would may have come to learn, did he have issues in which he was vulnerable as a suspect in anything, or that was not the case? And then I want to ask you to make a difference, if there could be, between the fact that the case is either the case could not be built or there was no case to begin with. What would you say?
You know, of course, I wasn't involved in the criminal aspect of the matter, right? But from all of our review of the matter, I mean, I was a prosecutor, so I could tell you this: if you can't pass that threshold of the magistrate's court, your case is very poor to begin with. What the problem we have in this country is that you rely significantly on eyewitness testimony or on statements made by other persons. I have read a lot about the evidence against Mr. Charles being that of another person who lived in the area and that sort of thing, as naming a number of persons involved in this murder. You know, if you have, as a police officer, you have a statement from a person saying X and Y, I saw them there and they committed the murder, then that is perhaps enough for you as a police officer, I don't know, to go and proffer a charge. How does that witness hold up in court? Are they credible? What other motives they may have for making that statement? Those are things that sometimes the police do not take into account or cannot make an adequate assessment of. So it comes to the court system and the witness turns out to be unreliable. My understanding was there was absolutely no forensic evidence linking Mr. Charles to the murder. And the witness, at some point in time, I guess, you know, a magistrate made the decision that the evidence wasn't there. My information as well is that he had no previous record, he had no other convictions, there was nothing pending. And that's a misconception that people have about this case. They believe that Achille Charles fought for bail for himself and he was an accused murderer who was now out on bail because of this case. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. The truth is, he had been accused and stayed in prison with no bail for the entirety of that matter when the state could not prove a case against him. And, you know, people want to, you know, draw the distinction between can you prove it and did it happen? Well, if you can't prove it, it didn't happen in the law, in the act of law. That's what, no, I'm sorry to say, that's just the stark reality of it.
Well,
we can't walk around saying,
you can't prove that something didn't happen. You have to prove that it happened. If you can't prove it happened, then it doesn't happen.
Well, exactly. That's how it works. You know, it's the state's job to prove it. And, you know, so he had no other convictions. He was not a person who was, as we talk about people who have, you know, numerous charges proffered against them under their out on bail. He was not one of them. When he walked out of that court in 2019, he was a free man. The accusation against him had, you know, not been proven. And from my information and my interaction with his family and so on, and what I know of him, he was making every effort, even outside of prison, to continue to try to turn his life around and to use his experience, which many people don't do when they get out of the prison system. He was really using his experience to try to make a difference in his community in particular. Again, when you come from a particular community or certain communities in Trinidad and Tobago, and you get into problems with the law, whether or not those accusations can be proven against you or not, you are deemed guilty. And it's very sad that our young men, I mean, when you deprive a young man of 9 years of his life, and he has, no matter what you say to him afterwards, free, not free, state hasn't proven, whatever it is, that stigma goes with him anywhere he goes.
All right, let me
trying to make that difference for others.
All right, I want to come back to you because I think I read in one of the pieces on it that there was another person who stands a good chance in the same kind of way because there's hardly this tangential. The charge against him is very tangential. I want to come back to that to do this. Debbie, to what extent you would have been keeping in touch with him since he came out of prison and what he might have been doing?
Well, Achille was always in touch with me. We were in touch regularly, through social media. We talked sometimes. He told me in the interview I did with him Thursday before he was killed that he was thinking about leaving Trinidad and going to one of the other islands to work. I also want to say, Andy, that I had my class in Port of Spain prison the day that he spoke out in court. when the matter came up that, there was going to be a new magistrate and the case had to start over again. I was actually warned before I went to class that day by some police officers that I knew who called me and said, be careful before you go to prison, when you go to prison today, because there was a near riot in court because somebody spoke out in court and everything. And when I reached there, my class was just like, everybody was very, very boisterous, very excited that somebody had stood up for them with this particular magistrate. And Achille, just sat there, just his calm, usual self. There was no, it wasn't it just wasn't anything out of the norm for him. He just stood up and said what he had to say whenever he had to say it. And there was never any emotional baggage that came with that, no anger, no, spite or anything like that. I just wanted to say that about him. He was just an extraordinary person.
What is the sense you have about, to the extent that you're in touch with those still in prison since his murder? How has that been received, as best you may know?
In prison itself?
Yeah.
Well, I hear remand prison. I hear inmates in remand prison said that they plan on the day of his funeral to wear black. Inmates are very, very sad about this. The word that gets to me is they're very sad. They're very upset because they say they know full well what Achille did for all of us. They never separate themselves from us. We separate inmates from the rest of society. But they don't separate themselves from us. They want to be accepted as part of society, and they want the same rights that we expect.
Yeah. All right, let's come back to you, Ms. Lashmi, on that question as to, is that a fact? I think I read it somewhere that there's another co-accused who is in a kind of similar position, that there's hardly a case to be made against him.
I believe that it was more than one person who had been released at the preliminary inquiry stage, who was also out of prison. One other person who had been accused as well, I think, was actually killed. I don't know if it was related to this or not. And you see, again, it comes back down to the fact that what Debbie said, we separate inmates, and also I would like to say former inmates from the rest of us in society. Do you hear anything from the police about persons who are released from prison and then subsequently killed? Are their cases and their murders given the same attention, or is it easier for the police and society for us to say, well, he was in prison, and we treat them as though their murder is not a murder, as though it was some successful businessman from West Morings, or I don't want to identify anywhere, but I'm just saying, you know what I mean, right? Yeah. From a well-known neighborhood in Trinidad and Tobago, anywhere. So I can't say, but listen, it's not even about a co-accused of Achille. There are hundreds of persons in this country on remand, some of them, or out on bail, accused of crimes where the state cannot prove the matter. And what Achille did is he shone a really bright light on the inefficiencies of the prison system and all of the issues plaguing the system. I want to say that through his very quiet advocacy, though, what he did is he has effected more change to the criminal justice system in the last 50 years than any government, any commissioner of prisons, any attorney general, and that's a non-biased, non-political, non-partisan statement. He has done more, because what he did is not just, people say, well, he's giving murderers bail. That's not the truth. What he did is he is now going to force the state and the system to look at things more carefully. You cannot run around. It's very easy to place people behind bars on a murder charge, and out of sight, out of mind. You know it's going to take 5 to 10 years for the matter to drag through the system, and it's like you don't have to deal with them. And that's the coping mechanism that law enforcement, the state by extension, and even citizens of this country have developed to deal with the murder rate. Okay, the police arrest them, they're going away. We don't have to deal with them. But that's the wrong approach. And the fact of the matter is that there are perhaps co-accused, there are others involved in that particular murder, involved in other murders, who will perhaps have the same experience of Akili Charles, of after many, many years being released from prison, being told, okay, you're free to go. What does that do for someone after 9 years or 10 years, whether it's at the magistrate's court or the high court or whatever it is, being told, okay, you're free to go? What becomes of them? You know, what is there in place to help them to get their life back on track? And so we are forced now to look at all those aspects of the criminal justice system, because all of that is criminal justice. You know, what happens to an inmate when they are released, whether they are released after serving a term or whether they are released after being found innocent or whatever it is? What happens to that person after they've been deprived of their liberty by the state, rightly or wrongly?
All right,
is part of the
we got to go. But let me just ask you if you could sum up, what is the situation with, what is the sort of the load of persons in that situation now claiming the right to bail, given the fact that the law now exists? What do you say? How substantial that is? You're not sure?
No, I mean, I can't say. The most recent figures I had, that persons on remand were somewhere over 2,000. Not all of them would have been previously deprived of bail by law, because not all of them would have been on remand because of a murder charge. I don't have the statistics of how many people are in prison on murder charges and are now eligible to apply for bail.
Yeah.
But, you know, when we had first taken this matter to the Privy Council and the state was asking for a stay on the matter, the DPP's office indicated that there were, you know, close to 100 applications being made at the time that they were faced to contend with. At the end of the day, yes, I could understand that it's a new situation that the state is finding itself into. They have to now deal with another component of bail. Bail is something the state deals with all the time, right? Yes. Because persons not charged with murder would make the application for bail. But like I said, I don't believe that it's an insurmountable, issue for them to deal with. They deal with bail. There will just be more applications now. And, I want to say something to the population that thinks that every accused murderer is going to be walking the street now amongst them and all of that. Take, for example, the case of the 8 police officers charged for a murder that happened 2 years ago based on the advice of the Police Complaints Authority. They have not been granted bail. And that is, in essence, to me, the best example of how the system works. The system works where a person who prepares before a judge will weigh all of the factors for and against based on the arguments made by the prosecution and the defense and determine what is right. So even a police officer who has an impeccable, obviously no criminal record, a clean record because they were police officers before that, who, perhaps you don't perceive to be a danger to society. They're not mass murderers, they're not serial killers or whatever it is. But there are other factors that perhaps the judge might have weighed. I'm just saying, I don't know, I wasn't there, but perhaps whether or not they have the ability to escape, flee the country, whether or not they can interfere with witnesses, all of those factors. And they determine that, listen, we're not going to grant bail. And that is exactly how the system is supposed to work. So this notion that every prison cell is going to fly open and that every accused murderer, whether or not the evidence is good or bad or ugly, is going to walk out of there and be living amongst us is a complete and utter rubbish, politically convenient argument that is being proffered out there. There's no basis for it in law, there's no basis for it in common sense even. And I wish to assure the population that is not the case. The impression given about Akili Charles, because he was subsequently murdered, is that obviously, he was a bad boy. And he was because again, that's the convenient argument that we tend to accept. It's easier for us to accept that. And I hope that interviews like this, where people who knew Akili and could speak about him, could actually change that mindset amongst the population about someone like Akili Charles, who really, to me, and in my particular view, paid the ultimate price for wanting to make a change in his community, from persons being treated as though they are criminals simply because of where they live and being susceptible to the, the pressure of those who control those communities. Those sorts of communities, some of them the state don't control them, the police don't control them, they are controlled by
themselves. Yes. All right. You just opened up an avenue for a whole other discussion about the mechanics of how this thing is supposed to work. I'll find a way we could get back to that at another point. But thank you very much, Debbie. You're going to get the last word.
Well, Achille knew full well the meaning of this Bail Act, and he said to me, "It's not going to be easy for people to get out on bail if they're charged for murder. It's not going to be that the gates are open and everybody runs out. What I'm doing or what we did," he always said we, he never said himself. So what we did was, and what I want is to address this injustice of people who are waiting so long to have their cases heard. He hoped that what would happen would be that police would be held more accountable for the way that they arrest people. That is what he wanted as one of the last things he said to me.
All right. Our thanks to both of you profoundly, Jayanti Lakshmi-Dayal and Debbie Jacob, on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy.
All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we hope to be talking with Mr. Leo Rankisoon, the head of the Fire Services Association. We heard a little bit from Saron Richards yesterday, reacting sort of forcefully to the position, at least alleged by them, of the CPO. He said that the question that he put 4% on the table as the final figure for around which negotiations should take place for workers in the public sector. And they're saying that's how it should be done, and they're not taking that. Stay with us.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship Mac Bean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
All right, welcome back to the program. Let's just run through the COVID numbers before we get to our next guest, who is Mr. Leo Ramkisoon of the Fire Services Association. These are what the numbers are saying for COVID-19 in our midst this morning. The total active cases, the positive cases, the deaths reported between 22nd July and 28th July for COVID-19. There were some days in there where there were no deaths, but these are the figures this morning. 6,369, the total active positive cases. 15 deaths in that period over the last week or so. 1,305, the new positive cases, and the total number of deaths thus far since we began the counting on March 12, 2020 to now, 4,061. So those are the sort of global numbers for Trinidad and Tobago as we speak on this day. Take it or leave it, 4%, that we understand is the position put on the table by the Chief Personnel Officer, Dr. Dindial. Well, some of the trade unions on the other side of the table are pushing back hard. We heard yesterday from Mr. Saron Richards, the president of the Prisons Officers Association. We're talking now with Mr. Leo Ramkisoon, head of the Fire Services Association. Good morning, sir. Thanks for agreeing to come on.
Pleasant morning to you, Andy, and pleasant morning to all your viewers.
All right, so just expand on what our understanding is from what we heard from Mr. Richards yesterday, so that if you can, so to give us a sort of kind of scenario situation as to how this 4% was put and presented.
Well, we met with the CPO as any other negotiation meeting, and the CPO on this last occasion, in a nutshell, reiterated that the offer has not changed from what was placed on the table on the last occasion. I would remind, and I would have reminded, that we wrote to the CPO as requested, as required, to inform the CPO that our membership had rejected the 4%. Of course, the 4% represents a 2% in 2014 to 2016, which really is 2% in 2016, and 2% for the period 2017 to 2019, which is 2% in 2019. And that is what makes up the 4%. Our membership has rejected that offer. We have previously rejected it. The state has not moved. So at this stage, we did inform the CPO. We did ensure that the CPO and us both understand that it is now in the state's court, the state's responsibility to respond if there are any movements to be made. If not, well, what has to be done will be done.
Which is?
Well, obviously, we have rejected that figure. It is clear to me at this stage that the members of the fire service, fire officers, are not willing under any circumstances to accept 4%. You see, Andy, 4% really represents, for the largest cross-section of officers in the fire service, it would represent, in dollars and cents, just under $300 gross. By the time you take out 25% tax from that, it is probably around $200. Officers are not willing to accept over a 6-year period, which really is beginning nearly 10 years ago, 9 years going into 10 years ago, a $200 increase for that period. That is really, really accepting a pay cut. It is really accepting a drop in your standard of living. It is a drop in your real income, because inflation over that same period amounts, according to the CSO, to approximately 44% increase in the price of general goods and services across Trinidad and Tobago. So if we were to accept 4%, it would mean that we are accepting to take a cut. Now, Andy, how is my members going to accept a pay cut, especially at a time when the entire world knows that Trinidad is in the midst of a windfall, according to the Minister of Energy and the Minister of Finance in the Parliament? they have announced it. It is true. I mean, it is also announced that deposits have been made in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, and we are mindful that the price of oil, energy prices can fluctuate and has fluctuated over the period. But how do you equate, how do you sort of justify a 4%? That is unreasonable. So we are saying that something much more reasonable ought to be applied. What we are guided by is that under the current regulations, the regulations guide the way that we decide how percentages are applied, how adjustments are made. And generally, coming out of the job evaluation exercise, there were, that is over 20 years ago, there were comparators that would have been used to develop an average market shift. And that market shift is what has guided the process, what's supposed to guide the process. I'm not saying it has to be exactly. In fact, what should obtain, given that we are the premier fire and emergency response agency in Trinidad and Tobago, we ought to be leading the market, in fact. But traditionally, we have lagged behind what it obtains in the market. But it can't lag to the point that it is only 4% of the increase now. I mean, that is totally unreasonable, and to accept $200 over 10 years.
All right, I want to get to a little bit about, for you to elucidate a little bit on the process and negotiation process, which may or may not be the case in this case. But you said the period we're talking about is between 2014 and 2019. So that leaves out where we are. 2022, that will, so there still remains a gap there in what we're talking about here to get to this point where we are. So between 2019 and 2022, that will be taken care of at some date down in the future.
Yes, that period has not come to an end yet, because that period commences from January 2020 and it will encompass 2021 as well as 2022, which we have not completed 2022. So the state has indicated so far that they wish to not only account for 2014 to 2016, which is what we have placed on the table for discussion, but they want to include the completed years of 2017 to 2019. So in that context, the state is attempting to apply the adjustments for those periods. And it stands to reason, because it is in the state's advantage to deal with those periods and apply whatever adjustments for the later period. The later the period, obviously, will be the later arrears will accumulate. So it is in the interest of the state to look at the later years. The earlier the years, the more time that the adjustments are applicable, and of course the arrears will be a little bit larger. Again, that is a very, very serious cause for concern for us when you disregard the early years, because what the state is proposing is to forget totally about 2014 and 2015 and apply 2% for 2016. What that means is that our retired officer who would have retired within more recent vintage, they would earn a very, very meager, even more, well, 50% of what the real the increase is on the table. And you remember, Andy, their pension is a result of, or it depends on their last salary when they retire from the service. So when they retire, that salary is used. The figure is used to calculate over months their pension going forward for the rest of their lives. And Andy, that is the thing, eh? We have asked for consideration to be given for our retired officers for their pension to experience some kind of an increase so that it could account for inflation. Not because they left the service, we disregard them and we treat them as if the world came to an end, or the world stood still in their regard. The same way the parliamentarians came to an agreement among themselves to increase their pension automatically. They don't have to lift a finger again. Their income, after serving just 5 years in the parliament and they leave the parliament, the pension they have earned after 5 years is going to automatically increase every 5 years to equate to a sitting parliamentarian or a sitting government minister. So, and remember that a government minister's salary, our own in the fire service, is probably not even 1/10 of that figure. So, I mean, these are the same people that are imposing this type of 4% increase on us, while they themselves, enjoying, all the milk and the honey. They treat themselves a whole lot different.
Is it to what extent it is a point to be noted that there may be at any point in time 20-something ministers, and you have 40-something MPs and whatnot, but we're talking about hundreds of thousands of public servants?
Well, Andy, you could look at it like that, but yeah, that's a fair point to make, the disparity in terms of the amount of public officers compared to the parliamentarians and ministers. However, where is the rationale there? Where is the rationale there? One would think, if I am asking those who I have the charge of, or the responsibility for managing, if I'm asking them to accept a decision to assist the circumstances, which they have done, and we have done so over the last 10 years without protest. If you are asking us to shoulder that burden, I can't see how you would find it so easy to not shoulder that burden just because it's less of you. That doesn't stand to reason for me, Andy. And especially, again, when you go on the international platform and you know boasting about the amount. And the approach we took in this salary negotiations is not just to show why officers are deserving of an increase that really represent what how the cost of living as a fire officer, treating with them at this stage.
Today's reality.
We are trying to show a cost-benefit analysis. We are saying invest in workers. If you want to attract foreign direct investment, if you want to attract tourism, one of the most important things those international agencies who issue advisories and so on put out there is that they look at your national security apparatus and your statistics and your ability to provide safety and security to visitors and to the assets and property of investors. And when you are unable to really provide the kind of safety that is required internationally, it affects your ability to attract the foreign investor. And we are saying that the fire officers, remember in our context, we have several stations that do not have a fire truck at this morning as we rise. We have officers who do not have breathing apparatus sets. The science is showing that the fire officer will develop cancers and other respiratory illnesses 3 times the rate of any other member of the general population. That's just a fact according to the CDC and the NIOSH.
I want to get to a point here where to find out to what extent I think you're speaking to it, that because you all insist that this process is a negotiations process and somebody just can't come and sit down and put a figure and say, well, that is it. For what you're saying here, my feeling is that so what you're telling the public here, that's part of what you all are putting to the CPO. Say, well, this is the situation that we have to address. These are the factors that we bring to the table, so that the negotiations are taking place from your side, is what you're saying, as opposed to simply responding that, well, that is not enough. I'm trying to get inside the process around the table.
Oh, well, I mean, Andy, in our last meeting, and on each occasion, let me start with the last negotiating meeting on the 2nd of August born here. We presented information, we presented our position for over a 3-hour period, and we would have broken down rationale and justification such that the CPO himself, I could tell you, the CPO agreed and the CPO admitted that it was very compelling information. I think the entire personnel department team that was there, the HR officers under the CPO and so on, they were all impressed. They were provided with ample information on 3 main areas. Firstly, the area of the health and wellness of officers, and how do you maintain the health and wellness of officers so that they can perform the job properly. And given the current scenario, so several studies were provided and ample compelling rationale was provided to establish that a better increase is more than needed so that the officer could access the type of wellness and health that is required to do the job. The second point was a cost-benefit analysis to show what value the fire service brings to the national community on a yearly basis. So we brought the statistics from 2013, come right up to present, to show that on average the fire service saves the economy of Trinidad and Tobago $1 billion per year. Some years is nearly $2 billion. And that is, you see, after every fire, after every response, remembering that we respond to our average of 6,000 emergency responses that most of the population don't hear about on a daily basis, we respond to every year. And when every year, 6,000. And when the officers complete it, they must do a report and interview the owner of the property so that they get an idea of what was lost in dollars and cents and what was saved. And then we compile that information over time. So we are able to see what we lost and what was saved for the year. And that is one way that we measure how our performance is in the fire service over time. So we were able to provide those types of statistics to show that when you invest in the men and women in the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service, it is an investment in the economy of Trinidad and Tobago from a business perspective. If you do it from a business perspective, you would see that it is a very wise decision to invest in the human capital so that you could truly attract foreign direct investment and move the foreign exchange forward, move the society forward and provide jobs and more opportunities for our population.
Right, and so the CPO, you say that, we're just looking at the office here, will listen to that, and you say in this case that he's saying that he understands that position. But
yes,
he
absolutely admitted that, but he is saying that the issue is the economic realities that his principal, the government, the Minister of Finance, is more focused on even though that they are experiencing a windfall, they are very mindful that the war may not go on and that the price of oil can drop and what obtained in the past, and they are fearful to take a decision to move the adjustment forward in any meaningful way, and then find out at some later time that the prices go back down and then it's a problem. But we are saying 4% is I mean, as I said before, that's $200, I mean, over 10 years. How in heaven's name that could be reasonable, Andy? I mean, come on. The price of goods and services have skyrocketed.
And in addition to that, does he in this case, at least in this instance, take some kind of a line of argument from what the Minister of Finance announced in his midterm budget review, saying that he read out a list of sort of responsibilities and the commitments that the government has to meet with various kinds of service providers and contractors and so on. So what we're seeing as money coming in, it's spoken for in a real sense. Does that part, to what extent that finds any favor with you? Apparently not, in terms of what else the government has to do with what it is getting in at the moment.
Well, you see, And the only real information the government is providing is through, very carefully so, through the Prime Minister when he delivers his statement on the cost. It would, the cost to the state to apply X percentage or Y percentage, and they're very careful to deliver those types of figures on an interview or a media conference, which I liken to a political platform really. And then when they go to the parliament, it's a different story. I am saying to you, we are not getting all the facts and figures, but I'm saying to you, whilst it is easy to come and say, well, you have all these debts, and it's debts you're talking about for all the contractors that they owe for different works and so on. The only way that you can, according to legislation, make a deposit into the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, which has been done, and I expect to be done again and again coming in the near future, is when you have a surplus. It means you have met your budget, you have met your projected debt servicing, and then you have an amount that you will, and that is prudent. I mean, that is what we have designed how we manage our resources in Trinidad and Tobago, by making deposits in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. But you must also recognize that you have a debt to public servants as well. You also have a debt to the people, the men and women that turn the wheel of the economy. And you cannot ignore that these service providers, us in the public service, play a very vital role. Notwithstanding, there are those even in government that look very, very negatively at us in the public service.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Yoram Kisoon, head of the Fire Services Association in this mess. We're going to news at the top of the hour, which is now. On the other side of that, we're talking with representative of the Ryudan Empowerment Foundation down there in Enterprise, something they call Girls Say Yes. It's a peace initiative that we want to talk about. Stay with us.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Scrap Iron President says he's not obligated to share information with the police. Works Minister assures that necessary works to be done to improve Debe roundabout. Covers Health MP condemns CPO offer. And internationally, China fires missiles near Taiwan after Pelosi visit. Now for the details. Scrap Iron Dealers Association President Alan Ferguson is confident that he does not need to share information with the police regarding who is purchasing stolen metals, as the police are already aware of whom these entities are. Speaking on WESN's Talking Point, Mr. Ferguson claimed that the international buyers and local buyers who are engaging in criminal activity are not unknown to the services, and that if desired, they can be raided.
If you're a thief or a bandit, and you go and you pull out TSDT wire, you may not belong to this organization, and you get in itself, then you know which part to go with it. Everybody know who the people purchasing, buying it. Everybody know who the people buying the stolen copper, you know. I don't need to even tell the police. I know places in out of Trinidad and Tobago, they could put sting operation. Everybody know where to go and tell it.
Mr. Ferguson alleges that in previous meetings with the Commissioner of Police, individuals would call to question his presence with the Commissioner and even give details of the meeting. He describes this as a very scary situation.
When we go by the Commissioner of Police and we go up the stairs and we are meeting with them, before we come back down, people down in Penal and they call me, or they was inside and they could tell me what we say. Instead of fighting stuff, you know. Everybody feel like you could just go and get information, but go and get information more. to look your life too.
Well, following another car accident at the Debe roundabout, which claimed the life of one man, the Minister of Works and Transport, Rohan Sinanan, is assuring that his ministry continues to do all that is necessary to ensure all infrastructure safety protocols are in place. However, the minister says that the onus is on the personal responsibility of drivers when they get behind the wheel.
At the end of the day, it all comes back down to drivers' responsibility, and we do have our infrastructural responsibility that we have to deal with, which we are dealing with, and the idea by the end of this weekend, we can add additional safety measures. We are looking at building a barrel wall in front of the Jersey barriers, should in case this happens again, the impact will be decreased on the vehicle approaching.
Minister Sinanan says his ministry will be laying strips at the Debe roundabout following the arrival of 2 machines that were purchased in July.
The ministry would have just purchased 2 machines to actually put the rumble strips on the road. We don't have any machines like that in Trinidad. The ministry would have ordered that in July, should be here on the 29th of August. So what we will be doing in that area, to start in that area, is actually putting in rumble strips on the road, utilizing the in-house machines that we bringing in at the end of April.
The recent announcement by the Chief Personnel Officer, Dr. Darrell Dindiel, that the final offer of increase from the government for members of the protective services is 4% is the epitome of the PNM's selfishness, nonchalance, spite and poor economic governance that is seen over the past 7 years. So says Kuva South MP and former Minister in the Ministry of Labour, Rujunathan Darasingh. He said that it is abominable that after 7 long years in office and with the protective services and other public sector workers having not received any increases in their salaries since 2014, that this government would offer a measly 4%. This government, he added, have created an economic hole that has seen the exponential increase in many aspects. In international news now, China has fired missiles near Taiwan as part of huge military drills following a visit by senior U.S. politician Nancy Pelosi to the island. Taiwan said China launched 11 ballistic missiles into waters around Taiwan's northeast and southwest coasts. Japan said 5 Chinese missiles landed in its waters as well, calling for an immediate stop to the exercises. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for watching.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers? Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
We delve into the exciting world of neurology.
The brain is an electrical organ. If the brain doesn't get enough blood with food and oxygen to it, it's not able to supply the electricity to the rest of the body. If that happens for a prolonged period enough time where the brain stops getting blood, part of the brain dies. Essentially, that's a stroke.
Hey guys, I'm getting a little nostalgic here, sitting on the blocks at the pool. Today we're going to talk a little bit about swimming. What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
There's a taste in the air everywhere. Feel the vibe 'cause it's something to share. Sweet smooth, rich and creamy. You'll find it right here. Makes you smile, relax a while. It's fun and good cheer. Ooh, enjoy every scoop. Ooh, every taste will get you hooked. We have flavors that you love, a combination special. Come along, enjoy our treats. This is Uncle Pete's.
All right, welcome back to the program. With us now, three ladies from my immediate left: Shehan, Marva, John Logan, Annalisa Boyce, and Sensi Chantal Lecreche. They're from this organization called the Riudan Empowerment Foundation, and they've launched a program called Girls Say Yes. It's a peace initiative which began on July 24th. We'll tell you more about it, what it's meant to do, and why it's happening. Good morning to all of you.
Last morning.
Let's start with you, Shehan. Talk about it. Girls Say Yes. What is it, and why are we talking about it?
Girls Say Yes is a peace initiative program that we launched on July the 24th. But more importantly, it came about because of those two dynamic young ladies to my immediate left. When we saw it needed in our community, all over social media, we saw the fights. Schools, slashing, cussing, the behavior of young girls, and everybody talking about crime and violence, but women have a role to play as well in crime and violence reduction or the preventing of any form of violence at all. And the young ladies and them came together with some young men in our community and decided that they want to do something different. A different way to tackle crime and violence, and wanted to start with women, young girls, because of the branding that they don't want anything good, teenage pregnancy, they're always running down men, and the whole narrative. And we wanted to change that. And we just didn't want to say no to none of those things. In order, we want to say yes. And the word girls stands for grooming intelligent, resilient ladies sustainably, meaning that we want them to become independent, powerful, dynamic, and peace ambassadors that could translate into peace from the home, school, community.
All right, thank you very much. Let's come to you, Sensi Chantal, to talk about your involvement in that.
I am the president of the Young Leaders Group at Riudan Empowerment Foundation, as well as one of the leads for the program. As the program is Girls Say Yes, and we have these young girls to mentor, we need the older heads and older ladies to back them up, and also to give them the support, to be a big sister, and to give them the advice or the information that they need in order to succeed, and to help groom them to become young ladies and intelligent ladies within their community, and to also to give back to other persons in the community.
All right, Annalisa Boyce, I asked you before we went on the air whether my sense is, from when I first began to become associated or knowledgeable about the organization, I got a sense it's a martial arts group that is significant in what you all do. And so I was asking you whether you're working your way on to get one of these titles. You say not yet.
Not yet, but soon.
All right,
soon I would.
Tell us a little bit about your involvement then.
So my involvement is basically I'm beneficiary. So I'm one of them who are being a part of this, who are taking whatever it is that Girls Say Yes have for the girls and for also the young men, because it's not just girls, but we have 3 young men. And I think I'm also, not I think, but I know I am an influencer to whoever it may be out there, because one of the gentlemen, not gentlemen, but young men who are part of the program, he said that he looked at me, and because we went to school together, primary school, we weren't in the same class, but he was like 3 years behind me. So when I left, then we bounced up in the savannah, right there in Edinburgh, 500 grounds, where we train netball. Yeah. Do our netball training. Okay. He saw me and he asked, "What are you all doing? Can men join?" I said, yes. Not just about the women who are doing the netball, but we also have men groups who does netball. He also said that he wants to join, so I said, no problem. So I gave him the information, whatever he needs, and saw him there Wednesday. I'm like very proud to see that I was able to influence this young man to join the team. And we also got a few more young men. So I see where even when I'm benefiting, I'm also influencing. And that's what we are doing. influencing the younger and all who may be looking to be influenced.
All right, so the question is influencing to what or towards what?
Yes. The idea behind Girls Say Yes, and it's a UNDP Peace Initiative. We are one of the winners. We're five winners. We were one of them, and it was all over. But the idea is to really create peace and to foster. So with the girls, we're supposed to be 10 girls. Now we are 35 girls and 6 young men coming from different parts of enterprise. And we have collaborated with Dash Trace Youth Empowerment Committee, Mr. Justin Lewis, Jim Wise Committee, which is Ms. Janelle Small Cummings. We all came together, and the idea is to influence them in such a way that could transcend, reduce fighting in school 1, reduce the gangs in the different area, because there are borderline that exists amongst the young people as well, that we can't cross borderlines. So we want to erase the borderlines, build bridges where they could cross over, and at the end of the Girls Say Yes initiative, we're going to revitalize a park that have been dormant for a lot of years. They young people going to do signage with peace, and we're going to get persons to sponsor, put up the banners, and get these same persons to bring their family into that space and use it. So because we really want persons to understand, we might be different, yes, face different challenges, but we are all human at the end of the day. And we want our young people to become peace ambassadors, to influence others, just as Annalisa and Sensi Chantel does on a daily basis. Bring people into that. Let them see there's a different option than crime, a different way of achieving goals. And our entrepreneurship line in this program is massive. So anybody who wants to be part of it can be part of it. And we started this as just one pilot project, but we hope that this template could be used throughout Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, I was saying before we got on the other turn, I first became a little familiar with the organization at a TTPB meeting that I attended, and this group was sort of recognized as being judged as the champion group among a set of groups which were considered for recognition by the TTPBA. Is it? But so talk about the work you will do. How does it get to be seen as delivering such excellence in what you'll do?
First to begin, our organization started off as an ordinary dojo. The co-founders of them, which will include several different persons. It had a need in the community. The community was lacking. It was fighting crime, and the young people just wanted something. So we decided to start a dojo after my mentor, Chief Reverend Dr. Kalaiton died. Yes, excellent, oh my God. And he left a legacy.
Past there. I mean, he's one of the first persons I worked with when I got into this business. He used to be in charge of printing at a paper called Moko.
Right.
That's where I started. Go ahead.
Right. So he left a legacy, and he mentored us. And we, in turn, when he died, we wanted to do something similar. And we started the dojo, but the dojo has transformed into this massive foundation where now international persons recognize any work, because we are guided by 7 pillars. And I just want to share the pillars with you quickly. One of the pillars is, of course, sports, martial arts at that time. But now we have martial art, netball, and football. Self-defense, education, leadership, youth leadership, parenting support. We have succession planning, and of course, entrepreneurship. And we are guided by those 7 pillars. So we do not work with a child or a young person without working with their parents, the caregiver, the imam, the mosque, the priest, the whoever, right? The pundits. We try to work with that child, but work within the entire environment. So when they leave our space and they go back home, the vision is carried there. They go to mosque, the vision is carried there. They go to the temple, the vision is carried there. So we do a lot of collaboration, a lot of partnering with international organizations as well as local organizations.
Yeah, that is clear. So, Annalisa, let's talk about I get a sense that you're already kind of on a track for leadership, the way you're talking there. Talk a little bit of how the program is impacting you personally.
Personally, it's impacting me where I am able to reach the young persons like myself, because we don't wait for the older ones to reach the younger ones. We need the younger ones like myself to reach the younger ones. And I am taking that path to reach out.
Yeah. All right, Shian Mava, your leader was talking about the issue of an absence of succession planning to move from one generation to the next. My sense is that, so you are part of that level, aspiring to take over when she retires and goes to see about her grandchildren and so on.
Yes, I am. So the succession planning is where we have the young leaders. So we have a young leaders team where she and Marva and the board of directors groom this group of young persons to take over the organization, whether it may be exposing us to the martial arts at a different level, or programs such as presentation skills or proposal development. But for us as young persons to be the lead in our community and to lead the other young persons by giving them advice, inspiring them, being influencers. So the succession planning is really for us to be able to take that spot and to groom and mold those in our community.
Yeah, and this particular program it has a duration of 6 months. And you want to get.
This particular program, because it's under funding by the UNDP, is just 6 months. Actually, it's supposed to just be 3 months, but because of the program scope has expanded, we decided to go to 6 months. But we're not going to stop there. The idea behind this, just as Sensei Chantal said, is to influence persons. So beyond the 6 months, the program is going to run. We just have to look for different funders, because what we are seeing now with the girls and the 6 young men who are part of the program, other people are coming on board, but we do not have the capacity to deal with that, because we want the program to be very successful first and foremost. We don't want to spread too thin and then it's not sustainable. Everything we do at Ruda Empowerment Foundation, we try to do it in line with the Sustainable Development Goal first and foremost, and we will always look for continuity. It makes no sense to have an initiative or an event that is a one-off. Young people don't want that one-off, and that is some of the problems that we see.
Particularly among the Sustainable Development Goals, which are the ones that you all...
Right, we have several, because we have an education element in the Girls Say Yes that is run by a fantastic woman named Ms. Karen Jo Bennett. We do literacy, so we talk about the education, sustainable goals by number 4. We talk about poverty, 1. Hunger, 1, because we look at the entrepreneurship element, partnership, goal 16, goal 17, goal 12. All those goals are aligned with exactly what we are doing now, because you must be able to connect the dots in order for recognition to come, 1, opportunity for young people as well. People do not want things that they cannot see benefit from. And the idea behind the Girls Say Yes is a peace initiative, but it's more than that. It's a life-changing project.
All right. So I misidentified you earlier on, Sensei Chantal. When I'm looking at the notes here, that in preparing for the discussion, the issue of, and you mentioned it a while ago, the issue of the border lines and boundaries in this community. How do you all negotiate that as young people?
The border lines, where persons can move from one area to the next area in enterprise, whether it may be from Chrissy Terrace to Bagaloo or Crown Trees. Yeah. But being a part of Ruda and a young person, I'm able to move across those borderlines. But the project is where we can have these young girls and also the young men, because we have 6 young men, to be able to come and get rid of that barrier, come together as one, build that bond, build that unity, and be able to work and coexist with each other. So therefore reducing the crime, because here we have young persons from the different borderlines coming together as one for resolution, for peace, for unity, to build within their community, to have this statement and this vision for what they want to see for their community, for a better place.
Now, what creates these borderlines in your experience? From
the gang warfare. The gang warfare creates the division. Those who want to be leaders, I lead in this group, I want to lead that group, that have the division or the borderlines.
Yeah, and I'm glad you took in like that, because in some cases, groups themselves have disputes among themselves, the leadership and the followers, and it's another issue from one group to the next. Yeah. So it's a very complex kind of...
It's very complex, and that is one thing that within the Girls Say Yes initiative, one of the programs that we are starting on Tuesday is a 3 weeks program where we do conflict resolution and peace negotiation with the members of the Girls Say Yes program, because it's necessary. In order for peace, you have to know how to resolve peace amongst your own self. And that is some of the things that we have seen when we had done the assessment with the young girls, with the fights. Sometimes we have an issue and all they know is fight, because that is all they see. Yeah. But if they learn a different way of coping and handling that, conflict resolution, peace negotiation, group dynamics, those are all part of some of the workshops that we'll be doing with the young, not the young girls, but we have boys as well, but the participants of the program.
All right, let's come back to your young influencer about so how you walk this road and how you continue to attract other people, bring them into the fold.
It's simply that because I am a young person like themselves, yeah. I mean, as much as we get ourselves in the fights, in the dispute or whatever it may be, we also wants to do something positive with ourselves, not just only the negatives. So me as a young person, who persons may look up as this positive one, they would come and speak with me. Even they might be doing the little wrong stuff or whatever it may be. Yeah. But they will still come and ask, hey Annalisa, what it is in the dojo? Like what time, when? You can pick me up and I don't have a problem with going for them. So I would bring them in just as how they are, just as how they want to come in, I will bring them in.
So just as I am.
Just as I am.
Thank you very much. You want to get the last word? Yeah.
Sure. I just want to say thanks to some persons before we leave, because it's important. For gratitude is a must. They know that. I want to thank Capital Enterprises Limited, Mr. Roll Logan, for giving us that space to use. Wall Regis Garage for allowing some of the persons who work there and also to fund some of the things that we do. Justin Lewis, the Stress Empowerment Committee. Janelle Small Cummings from Jim Wise, because those are all different areas in the community. And when we send out and we say we're going to do this project, they are the ones who answer the call. And I also want to thank UNDP for thinking about communities such as ours and small groups such as ours that are making waves all through the world. And I ask my government and the people that be corporate in that social responsibility is important. Get on board with any group that is making change. Make it easier for us to reduce crime, stop violence, but more importantly, empower young people. Give them the chance to lead, and let's support that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Our thanks to all three of you, the Greendot Empowerment Foundation. Well, that's our broadcast for this Friday morning. That's it for this week. We want to thank you for watching and staying with us here. You can keep in touch with us here at WESNCC and all our social media platforms. And as usual, we tell you, you can send your emails to amprime@WESNCC.com. We have news on the top of the hour, followed by today's edition of Talking Point with Shah and Small. But for now, I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on Monday. But, of course, I'll be back here at 10 o'clock with this week's edition of 10 Questions. So stay where you are.
WESN.
The Mary Immaculate Prayer Group and Friends presents its prayer breakfast on August 31st in aid of Monsignor Christian Pereira. The prayer breakfast begins from 9 a.m. at the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception. Cost is only $200. Come support the Cup of Gratitude in aid of Monsignor Pereira, August 31st.
Tickets are available at the parish office of the Cathedral of Immaculate Conception and the parish of Our Lady of Perpetual Help.
I'm Sean Michael Small, and we are WESN, the content capital.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
I'm Keaton Shaw, and we are WESN, the content capital.